Hey there. Happy Thursday afternoon. I wasn't able to join you live yesterday, Wednesday, after Baker Mayfield was traded from the Cleveland Browns over to his new team, to the Carolina Panthers, because I had to be at a funeral, unfortunately. There was a death in the family, so took that day off. I tweeted a few times, had a chance to react to the news there, but now we can finally delve a little bit further into it with regard to the 49ers implications and what that means for Jimmy Garoppolo moving forward. But Cleveland did offload Baker Mayfield for a fire sale price yesterday. Here's the article in The Athletic, one of many. This from Zach Jackson, who writes about the Cleveland Browns. Baker Mayfield's trade to the Panthers seals a complicated legacy with the Browns, from Zach Jackson. Make sure to check that out on The Athletic. But by fire sale price, well, it only costs Carolina a conditional fifth-round pick. If Mayfield does indeed start over Sam Darnold in this 2022 season, that will become a fourth-round pick. So it's not nothing, but it's obviously not a lot, especially considering the fact that the Browns are still carrying over $10 million of Baker Mayfield's salary. The Panthers only have to pay about $4.9 million. And as part of all this, Baker Mayfield took a $3.5 million pay cut. Now, this is a little bit different than the Jimmy Garoppolo situation. You might say apples and oranges, but we can still draw some comparisons, and we could obviously still talk about the quarterback carousel, maybe even quarterback musical chairs, right? Because at the very moment right now, there really isn't a spot for Jimmy Garoppolo to land, although as offseason developments continue happening, as camp developments do happen, a chair might open up, and that's obviously what the 49ers are banking on. But the primary difference between Garoppolo's situation and the situation that Mayfield found himself in before being traded, aside from the fact that Garoppolo's team, current team, and I guess Mayfield's former team, if we're going to make that comparison, didn't criticize Garoppolo for not being an adult. That Cleveland actually did that. Cleveland said they needed an adult at quarterback and then proceeded to go out and get Deshaun Watson. But, besides all that, the main difference in this situation is that Baker Mayfield's $18.8 million for the 2022 season were fully guaranteed. It was the fifth-year option price, so it was completely guaranteed. For Jimmy Garoppolo, the $24.2 million base salary for this 2022 season is not guaranteed, and it won't become guaranteed until if and when he makes the 53-man roster. So we could look at this, financial division for how Baker Mayfield was handled, how his contract was absorbed by the Carolina Panthers, and we can draw some predictive power to how Jimmy Garoppolo's contract might, be treated as if he were to be traded here moving forward. But we can't draw a direct parallel because of a couple reasons. And one is that Cleveland offloaded Baker Mayfield for a complete fire sale price because they are desperate to get rid of that $18.8 million, while the 49ers aren't yet desperate to get rid of Garoppolo's $24.2 million. In fact, they can't do anything, and they would be stupid to do something until Garoppolo actually passes a physical. And that's expected to happen at some point here in early July when he resumes throwing, but we're not at that point yet. And because the 49ers don't owe Jimmy Garoppolo any of the $24 million, they'd only owe him the injury guaranteed $7.5 million if they cut him while he's still hurt. But even, if he does pass a physical, they still don't owe him that money until if and when he makes the 53-man roster. The 49ers are actually in a more flexible position than the Cleveland Browns were in regard to Baker Mayfield. So in general, when people, the knee-jerk reaction is to put out an article, what does this mean for the 49ers and Jimmy Garoppolo, since Mayfield and Garoppolo have been tied to the hip as far as trade media goes, not trade discussions, but trade media goes. Nothing has really changed regarding Jimmy Garoppolo, because no one expected any Garoppolo movement until he could showcase his arm in live action. I mean, the guy had shoulder surgery earlier this offseason on his throwing arm. So he's been unable to throw a football and is not expected to begin throwing a football until any day now, until early July, right? We finally hit early July. So I think we all came to the understanding, and the 49ers also came to the understanding shortly after Garoppolo's surgery earlier this offseason, that there wasn't going to be any movement on this front until teams could do their due diligence and not only say, oh, Jimmy Garoppolo has passed the physical, but probably they'd also need to see him throwing in live action. They need to see a quarterback's most valuable asset, his arm, actually performing again post-surgery, at least on an NFL practice field. So without movement expected on this front until that happened, I don't think it's necessarily surprising that Baker Mayfield was moved first. Obviously, we had talked about Carolina as a potential Garoppolo destination down the road. But, I mean, you look at the Panthers, I think they're desperate to add a QB. With Matt Rule and that coaching staff, they've had 2 losing seasons. They're on the hot seat entering this 2022 campaign. And I don't think you want to be on the hot seat as a coaching staff with Sam Darnold as your only chance at quarterback. So they brought in Mayfield. They actually play the Browns in week 1, Carolina against Cleveland. So we can all hope that Mayfield starts because we could get the popcorn out. That'd be some nice drama in week 1. But as far as the 49ers go, I guess we could change the picture right here. Since Garoppolo's surgery, the 49ers have been counting on an evolving quarterback market. And the main evolution of the market really isn't anticipated until training camp starts, because that's when guys can start getting hurt. Right now, an evolution might happen a lot sooner than that with the Cleveland Browns, because Deshaun Watson already had his disciplinary hearing. And we're expecting that at some point here in, I think, next week or at some point this month, right? We're expecting the verdict from his disciplinary hearing. And if Deshaun Watson is suspended for a longer period of time, half a season, full season, indefinite suspension, then all of a sudden the Cleveland Browns will have a certain quarterback need. They have Jacoby Brissett on the roster, but I think, given the fact that they have got Myles Garrett on that team, they brought in Amari Cooper, they brought in Jadeveon Clowney, who actually said that the reason that he signed with Cleveland was because he wanted to play with a good quarterback in Deshaun Watson. Well, if that ready-made roster all of a sudden is missing its starting quarterback due to a suspension in Deshaun Watson, I don't think that they're going to want to roll with Jacoby Brissett. So there, all of a sudden, you'd have some quarterback market evolution, right? If Deshaun Watson is suspended, all of a sudden there'd be an opening, and potentially they'd be in the market for somebody like Jimmy Garoppolo, even though as I speak right now on Thursday afternoon, I can't say that there's an obvious opening anywhere for Jimmy Garoppolo. But the 49ers, since the surgery, since they've recognized that Garoppolo wouldn't be able to throw until early July, have counted on the market to evolve at some point during this 2022 season. And the evolution likely wasn't going to start until training camp, or with the special circumstance of Deshaun Watson, might start a little bit earlier than training camp. So that leads us to the main question. When is the 49ers deadline for jettisoning Jimmy Garoppolo? Because if this market's going to start to evolve, if the ball is going to start rolling on this, well, when do the 49ers say, okay, we can't wait anymore? When does the opportunity have to present itself by for the 49ers to potentially jump on one? And for this, I have a few theoretical deadlines, and I could talk about the various possibilities of each one. Theoretical deadline number 1 for the 49ers to act on Jimmy Garoppolo, to either release him or trade him or whatever, is as soon as Garoppolo passes a physical. Right now, since Garoppolo is recovering from surgery, he's technically hurt, and he's got a $7.5 million injury guarantee that he actually triggered by leading the 49ers all the way to the Super Bowl in 2019, or the NFC Championship game, winning that NFC Championship game in 2019 as part of the deal that Garoppolo signed in 2018 with the 49ers, meant that $7.5 million of his 2022 salary would be guaranteed for injury. So if the 49ers cut Garoppolo right now, if they release him and they say, we're not going to even wait until you get healthy, they'd still owe him $7.5 million thanks to that injury guarantee, which is why it makes no sense to jettison Jimmy Garoppolo at this very moment. So theoretical deadline number 1 would be to release him as soon as he passes that physical. Now, is this likely? Some people have speculated that the 49ers might do this just because they're so sick of this whole process. But based on everything that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have said, I don't think it's likely at all. They remain adamant that carrying Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster for the time being until at least the 53-man roster cut down carries no additional cost to the team. They've already carved out the salary cap space. Carrying Garoppolo has not prevented the 49ers from signing any free agents. They've got nearly $5 million in room right now, even with his big number on the books. So why not wait if it's not guaranteed? If you could let go of him at any time before that 53-man roster cut down, why not wait to see if the market evolves? And everything that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have said so far indicates that they're willing to buy more time in the pocket for that market to evolve. So theoretical deadline number 1 doesn't seem like it's too likely to me that the 49ers consider that to be the actual deadline for movement on the Jimmy Garoppolo front. So that moves us to theoretical deadline number 2, prior to the 53-man roster cut down. Now, this one's much, much more likely. Jimmy Garoppolo has $24.2 million scheduled to him through his base salary here in the 2022 season. But again, zero of that, nothing of that is guaranteed until, if and when he makes the 53-man roster. So the 49ers, it's injury guaranteed. We talked about that. But after Garoppolo passes his physical, and that's purportedly going to happen, right? I would expect that to happen. After he passes his physical coming up and he has a clean bill of health, the 49ers would be able to release Jimmy Garoppolo at no financial penalty. Yes, they'd take a small $1.8 million, I think it is, maybe $1.6 million dead money hit. That goes back to the signing bonus that Garoppolo got back in 2018. But as far as everything that still hasn't been paid, it's not guaranteed. That $24.2 million would not guarantee until, if and when, Garoppolo made the 53-man roster, because he is a vested veteran. And if you make that week 1 roster as a vested veteran, it becomes guaranteed. So theoretical deadline number 2 makes a whole lot more sense, because that's the actual financial inflection point in all of this. The 49ers can go around not worrying about Garoppolo's money, knowing that they can release him at any time up until the 53-man roster deadline. And if he makes that 53-man roster, well, then you're on the hook to pay him, unless you trade him. So that moves us to theoretical deadline number 3, the actual trade deadline, which comes right around Halloween in the middle of the season. It is not completely ludicrous to think if nothing opens up on the quarterback front, if nobody gets hurt during training camp, and the 49ers are stubborn, they don't want to give up Jimmy Garoppolo for nothing, it's not completely ludicrous to think they might buy a little bit more time, keep him on the roster since they could afford him anyway for the time being, and trade him at some point between weeks 1 and whenever the trade deadline comes in the middle of the season. Because say that a quarterback gets hurt elsewhere, Matt Ryan gets hurt for the Colts in week 1, or somebody else gets hurt in week 2. If Garoppolo is traded after week 1 or after week 2, the 49ers would only be on the hook for the salary of week 1 or week 2, and immediately the team acquiring him would pick up that salary. Now, I don't think this is particularly likely, because the 49ers, with none of Garoppolo's base salary in 2022 being guaranteed, they can, find, even if they wanted to keep him, if there are no trade suitors, they could find a way with some leverage to talk down the amount of money in that deal. So this is a conversation that wouldn't, I think, be had until that 53-man roster deadline's approaching and it's apparent that a trade won't happen. So, I don't think that this particular deadline would be likely at these numbers, but it's important to remember that even if Garoppolo does make the 53-man roster, and because by making it, he would be guaranteed some money as a vested veteran, it's important to remember that the 49ers would only be on the hook, given a trade that happens after week 1, for the money that they, on the salary cap that they paid Jimmy Garoppolo while he was with the team, which makes the trade deadline a possible deadline moving a little bit further. But I think based on everything that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have said, theoretical deadline number 2, prior to the 53-man roster cut down, is much, much more reasonable. And then there's theoretical deadline number 4, that there is no deadline. And that's going to make a lot of people really mad and, throw their arms up in there. What the hell are you talking about? But obviously that is feeding a lot of the Trey Lance conspiracy theorists. If there is no deadline and the 49ers are actually keeping Jimmy Garoppolo because they don't believe in Trey Lance, well, that's what's leading to a lot of the asinine takes that we're seeing around social media. And there is no shortage of these terrible takes regarding Trey Lance. Most of them are built on the erroneous assumption that the reason the 49ers still have Garoppolo on their roster is because they don't believe in Trey Lance. But if you actually listen to what Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have had to say at every turn of this, keeping Garoppolo on the roster has nothing to do with their belief or lack thereof in Trey Lance. Keeping Garoppolo on the roster is something the 49ers are doing by necessity, because Garoppolo had surgery this offseason on his throwing arm because he was hurt. I mean, that's the Jimmy Garoppolo story, right, for the 49ers. Effective quarterback, played good football for them, but injury after injury after injury caused the 49ers to have to draft his potential replacement in Trey Lance. And then the coup de grace, fitting to the theme that we've seen here over the past couple of years is that even after Lance was drafted and even after Lance was on path to be the 49ers' new starting quarterback, the injury issue got in the 49ers' way again. And the injury issue for Jimmy Garoppolo has been with the shoulder, and that surgery this offseason. But the Trey Lance conspiracy theorists do need something to talk about. They've used the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo is still on the roster as some kind of fuel, even though it goes against everything that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have said. The latest wild rumor is that Trey Lance has some kind of arm endurance issue. To that I say, this is not baseball. We're not dealing with a starting pitcher who's throwing 120 pitches. I guess in baseball, they don't throw that many anymore. They specialize the arms, but arm fatigue, whatever, give me a break. It's definitely not coming from inside the 49ers building, all of these rumors. And I think that we saw Trey Lance in OTAs and his arm looked fine. I think we saw him in 2 games last year starting for the 49ers, and I think his arm looked fine, despite the fact that he actually had a broken chipped finger for the 49ers in those games that he suffered against the Raiders in the preseason. So as far as Lance goes, it's a lot of conspiracy theories right now. The true answer is that we don't know. And anything that people are peddling about Trey Lance right now is likely a strategy to get clicks and nothing more, because, I mean, we're in a vacuum, and that vacuum finally will be cleared on July 29th when training camp starts. But for the time being, we can't say much else. But anyway, this is more about Jimmy Garoppolo and how everything, kind of trickles down from the Baker Mayfield situation. And I think the overarching take here is that nothing's really changed regarding Jimmy Garoppolo, right? People always want to create news and apply it to the 49ers, but it might not necessarily apply. And the truth about Jimmy Garoppolo is that no one expected him to be moved until he could showcase his arm in live action. And the 49ers are waiting for that moment, and they're counting on an evolving quarterback market once stuff can happen, once guys can start getting hurt, maybe once something happens to Deshaun Watson's suspension. They're waiting on that for potential Jimmy Garoppolo movement. But it was still interesting yesterday to see Baker Mayfield offloaded for that fire sale price. All right, I'm going to answer a few questions. Then I've got to get going. I'm going to grill pizza tonight, so I have to handle a couple of things. Andrew says, keep Jimmy Garoppolo. You need 2 QBs. You also get the comp pick after he leaves. Yes, I mean, this is obviously part of my 4 theoretical deadlines, right? The 49ers can't keep Jimmy Garoppolo into the season. And I think this is a good point because there's a really, overarching theme here coming from both Kyle and John, emphasizing the importance of depth in the quarterback room. If you want depth at running back, you want depth at receiver, and you want depth along the offensive line, among other positions. D-line is a great example for the 49ers. Why wouldn't you want depth at the most important position, which is quarterback? The issue is that it's normally too expensive to field depth at quarterback because QBs are expensive. But the 49ers have carved out room for both of these players. Would there be an opportunity cost by keeping Garoppolo into his guaranteed money portion of the season past week 1? Yes, there would be. I think that the money that the 49ers currently have dedicated to Jimmy Garoppolo, that they would free up, that $24.2 million, I think that could probably be used, in case they're contenders under Trey Lance, for an in-season trade to acquire a bigger contract in the middle of the season. As of right now, it can't really be used to acquire anybody. And if they did need to acquire somebody here in the middle of the season, 49ers could either restructure their deal or they could restructure somebody else's deal, and they would be able to fit in. Jimmy Garoppolo is not preventing them from doing that. But in the middle of the season, like the Rams last year, they picked up Von Miller, but they got Denver to pay most of his salary. If the 49ers wanted to pick up somebody like that and couldn't get the team trading him away to pick up his salary, it would be nice to have a little financial buffer. And I think that's where the opportunity cost of the Jimmy Garoppolo money comes in. So in my opinion, that's, kind of the way that the 49ers are structuring this, looking at the potential money vacuum in this situation. But I definitely do know that they value what Andrew's saying, that they do want as much depth as possible in the quarterback room. It's just a matter of, would it be possible, and does the opportunity cost outweigh the opportunity to take 2 quarterbacks? And based on the way that Kyle and John have been talking, they want to trade Jimmy Garoppolo. They want to get something in return for him. They want to open up that cash. They want to turn the page to the Trey Lance era. But, plan A, plan B, plan C, I've talked about it a lot. Different realities might dictate different courses of action for the 49ers moving forward. No, this is not true. Keeping Jimmy will not inhibit signing Deebo and Bosa. The 49ers currently have about $5 million in salary cap space, and they can sign Deebo and Bosa, both of them, for next to nothing above their current cap hits. Bosa and Deebo already are registering 2022 salary cap hits. Fred Warner, for example, was already registering a 2021 cap hit with his rookie deal. Then the 49ers gave him the biggest contract in linebacker history, and his cap hit stayed the same. So the 49ers have enough money to extend both Bosa and Deebo Samuel to long-term deals without significantly raising their cap hit. They could fit it even with Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster. So this is a myth. This is a myth. The 49ers do not need to move Jimmy to execute these two big pieces of off-season transactions. Like I just said, the money from Jimmy Garoppolo, from freeing up Jimmy Garoppolo from the books, that could be used for an in-season trade. That's not money that's going to be going to Bosa or Deebo Samuel. Almost knocked over my cup right here. That was almost embarrassing. I'm standing up for these shows now. They're going to backload Bosa and Deebo no matter what they do. Guys, financially, the NFL is about to receive a massive windfall with this new TV deal that kicks in 2023. This is something over $100 billion for the NFL. The cap is expected to rise disproportionate to player salaries for at least a few years. It's going to be absolutely crazy. And the 49ers have structured all their business, and I'm sure that most teams are structuring all their business around this. They're backloading deals because salary cap inflation is going to be outpacing what the teams have to pay. So backloading is going to be the way to go. That's the way that the 49ers have gone. And it's a unique moment in league history where you can get away with backloading without much downside at all because of this new $100 billion media rights agreement. It's going to lead to the skyrocketing of the cap. So I think that's what the 49ers are going to do. All right, let's scroll up and we'll ask, we'll see if, would Jimmy accept a backup role? That's a good question. I think Jimmy Garoppolo would accept a chance to compete. And I think the 49ers would be open for a chance for Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo to compete if that's what they end up having to do, right? If they get no takers on Jimmy Garoppolo, I think that they have him come to training camp. They let him compete because he stays sharp. Other teams can see what he has. And then boom, it could take 1 second, right? Some other QB somewhere else can snap his ACL. All of a sudden that team needs a quarterback. And then Jimmy Garoppolo is shipped off then, and you get a pretty handsome return for him if somebody gets desperate. So you just keep your options open. You buy as much time. It's just like a quarterback in the pocket against the pass rush. You scramble out of the pocket, you step up in the pocket, you buy some time in order to make the most accurate throw possible. And we're what, July 7th? We're still nearly 2 months away from any potential inflection point in this situation. When does Jimmy start throwing? Physical date? I'm not sure. It's going to happen at some point early in July. That's what they said. I haven't heard a firm update yet all too recently. All right, guys. Let's see. What are you guys saying? Any more questions? Okay, well, this is a response to what I said. Just because the salary cap is going to explode doesn't mean you should waste $25 million a year on a backup. Well, I didn't say. I mean, this is a big jump in logic. I didn't say that they A, should do that, or B, would do that. And I think that Mike here clarified it. He's not saying that they should, but it's possible and it can happen. I'm outlining theoretical courses of action of what the 49ers will do. It's more likely than not the first or the second option. Thank you, Mike. I'm going to go back and go through the theoretical deadlines. Theoretical deadline number one would be for the 49ers to just jettison Garoppolo as soon as he passes a physical at some point earlier in July. Theoretical deadline number two, prior to the 53-man roster cut down. Also, number one could happen at the start of training camp if he doesn't come in to take a physical until then. So, I mean, I think number two is probably the most likely, but one, who knows what the 49ers are thinking now. We haven't talked to John or Kyle in a while. Number three and number four, those are less likely, but both possible. So it's all context within which we must view this situation. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope I outlined everything in clear terms. I know it's a complicated situation. I know that whole Baker Mayfield trade news yesterday brought this higher up in the news, but it's always worth talking about. And I'll keep you apprised of this Jimmy Garoppolo situation and, of course, of the Trey Lance situation as time progresses. Everybody, if you're just walking in right now, or if you've been in the whole time, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Seriously, sub to the channel. Subscribers, very welcome. Do it right now. I'm going to pause right now. Subscribe to the channel. And we'll talk to you all next time. I'm sure to have a lot of shows coming up soon to help guide you through this dead period. We got the most in-depth 49ers content around on athletics, so be sure to subscribe there as well. Hit that button on YouTube, and I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks for joining.